Okay, I see our speakers enter the chat, so I'll just go over some housekeeping rules before we start our session. So again, if anybody wants to remain anonymous due to the session being live streamed on Facebook or recorded to the Sabil archives, please do so now. Please remain respectful in the chat and be sensitive that you have. Please post them on the chat and I'll try my best to introduce them to our speaker and to ask them. With that being said, let's begin our session and I'll introduce our special speaker for today. So today our topic will be women in conflict, and the speaker of today who came last minute is Reverend Sally Azar, who graduated from the Near East School of Theology in Lebanon and continued her graduate studies in theology in Germany. She was elected to serve as a Lutheran World Federation Council member for the Asia region and now serves as the Redeemer Church in Jerusalem. Reverend Sally, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you all, and I look forward for our discussion.
First of all, thank you very much for coming on a short notice. We understand that these are very, very difficult times, so we really appreciate it. I guess for the first topic, for the first question, is with what is going on in the West Bank, in Gaza in particular, how are the recent escalations of violence affecting women in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll do a quick, I don't know how much you know right now about the whole situation, but there's a lot. I mean, people are not really noticing the Palestinian lives that are actually being, the civilians that are being affected by the whole war that is going on. I mean, it's been heartbreaking to see so many pictures, and some people are just like looking away from pictures from children who are like, I mean, the pictures, they speak for themselves, and it's just heartbreaking to see. And even though if we don't want to see them, they have to see that every single day. They have to keep fighting and like still looking for people. I mean, the whole like all the whole population is just gathered into one. And I think this is really important to know that these are also a lot of Christian and Muslim women who are suffering with their struggles as Palestinians. That's joint in that case when we talk about Gaza right now. And it has like the whole, like since the beginning of the from the beginning of the war, like now since October 7th, let's say, 493,000 women and girls have been displaced from their homes in Gaza, and it has and it's still growing, and even the number of widows, like a lot of women are being widowed, and a lot of women are losing their children, and a lot of also little girls are being orphaned. A lot of the women that are like they're not able to have any place to go, they're like displaced, and like the whole violence is affecting them in many ways where I think gender justice doesn't play a role anymore there, because there's nothing like that you can say, okay, this is gender, in that sense. They're all fighting together and fighting for their own lives and fighting to see how they can survive. Like there's no sanitary products that they can use. There's you can all basic stuff. Like I feel like every day when I wake up and I mean, there's a lot of Palestinians that I would say that are going through the same thing. We're waking up and thinking, okay, they are not able to do that. They're not able to brush their teeth right now. They're not able to be at their own homes or even sleep. And it's just all these emotions coming up with thinking about how basic stuff in our daily lives are not even accessible to them. The UN Women Deputy Executive Director said that the UN, the women have called for, like the UN women have called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and unimpeded access for humanitarian aid, including food, water, fuel, and health supplies that are critical for the survival of women and girls in the Gaza Strip. It's imperative that we ensure immediate access to services for women and girls and ensure prevention of gender-based violence as the international community seeks to respond to the crisis. We must also wholeheartedly support and invest women-led organizations which are at the front line of the humanitarian response and promote the meaningful participation of women in humanitarian and political processes. And these are things that we should as well address. These issues, like we should fight for having humanitarian aid being brought to them, not only one bit, like 20 trucks from, I don't know how many that were, like over 7,000. I don't know the numbers right now, but there were like, and they're still, like, the trucks are still there, but they're not being able to access them. And the trucks are not even reaching to the northern part of Gaza. So you can imagine that the northern part, where the women are there, where they are like, where should we go? I mean, specifically, like, I think this is the case for a lot of people right now, but if we're talking also about the women, where should they go? Like, there's also a woman who was like, I have 4 kids. How do I even leave the house right now? Like, I need to take care of them, and I don't even know how to take care of my children. And even the stories of a woman who's like, who went to get food for her son and comes back and doesn't find the whole house, and then discovers her son has passed away. And it's these stories that are actually like, it's just unbearable to see. And of course, there's like the women, and like, they're always seeking shelters in many ways, and trying to find the foods and like food, water, and like, and trying to protect themselves in many ways. And I know that this is leading to lots of depression, a lot of trauma in the women, and I mean in the whole society as well. But it's like they are dealing with a lot of emotions right now, and we're hoping that we can get to that level that we can actually, I mean, right now I'm thinking of like trauma sessions and stuff, but they are still living the trauma in order to, like, they're still processing it, so we cannot even deal with it. Yeah, and I'm not like, of course there are a lot of like, yeah, I mean, that's as much as I can say right now about the women. I mean, there's a lot of agencies, a lot of people that are doing a lot right now to help the women and the girls and the whole society, you know, like to have these access for the basic needs that they need. But the basic needs right now is not food. It is to be seen as a human being.
Right. And it's interesting, you know, it's important to note how since the 7th of October and the complete closing of any medical aid, food, and water, it's affected women in a particular way. As you mentioned, they don't have sanitary pads. Some are taking special pills to delay their periods.
Right.
There's around 50,000 women who are pregnant. So you can see the effects on the bodies of women for sure.
And yeah, premature birth, like a lot of them are having even like, and there's no care in the hospitals anymore for the babies that are being born early. I forgot the words, but yeah, I mean, that's also like, there's no care for that as well, and for the women, and for, it's like everything that you think of is there, and this is just crazy to think about.
Yeah. Could you also speak on what's going on in the West Bank, perhaps from what you know? The West Bank is also pretty much shut. The rise of violence amongst the Israeli army and settlers who have been given machine guns very, very easily. Could you speak from your work and in general the overall context of the West Bank and in recent times, how have women been particularly targeted and had also a patriarchal violence as much as the occupation as well?
I want to say, like, I don't know how many of you know, but there's a lot of, like, has been a lot of tension in the West Bank as well. A lot have been killed since, like, over 100, I would say now, that have been killed in the West Bank through settlers and through soldiers, like many different events, different people that are being affected. And I mean, yes, the whole situation is very, like, everyone is depressed. Everyone, like, not only depressed, we don't know how to go on with our lives right now, knowing that this is happening just like an hour away from us. And we're also feeling helpless in many ways. And me as a pastor, I don't know how many of you know, but I'm a pastor in Beit Sahur and in Jerusalem. So I would actually need to go through the checkpoints in order to reach my congregation. And well, right now the checkpoints are closed. So I haven't been able to go to my congregation or like lead my Sunday services as per usual in Beit Sahur. So it's, I mean, there is only one way, like you go park your car, walk and take another cab or let someone pick you up in order to reach to your congregation. And that's what I did last week because, you know, a lot of our congregation members, or at least one of my congregation members in Beit Sahur, she lost family in the attack at the church last week. And I couldn't bear in mind, like, as also her pastor, not to go and visit her. And so, and she, like, so yes, of course, I went there, and it's just silence. I mean, the whole West Bank is silent, and it's not the same way, like the whole atmosphere. I don't know how many of you have been there, but it's not, you will not recognize it right now. I don't know how to explain, but yeah, I mean, that's where all the women also gathered. They're all strengthening each other. They're all lost each other, like someone in the war right now, and they're all trying to empower each other. That's how I'm experiencing it. Still, they're like, it's not as easy, I would say, that they have, like, things are being like difficult for them in order to, like, I mean, in the West Bank you can still move around, unlike here. I mean, in Jerusalem you can now still move around, but it's still, you don't feel safe that much anymore. You know that settlers are walking around, you see people holding guns, and you just don't know, like, who will who will or what will happen. So I really walk around with anxiety all the time. And a lot of the women are also traumatized. Like, people are telling you stories, like they're reminded of things that they've experienced from many different, like from different wars and like Nakbas. And so it's like now like a recap for them, like talking about all these different emotions that they know of, like, oh, these things are coming back. And I mean, and how do we handle this? So I'm having quite trouble to find the right words, because I myself, I'm like, still getting more used to, like, getting back used to the whole situation, which sounds really weird in terms of, I really don't want to get used to these things that are happening here, but that would show you how much we as Palestinians live here with knowing or how much we get used to things, that it's getting normalized. So even now the war, like even now in Jerusalem, things are like going on or moving on, and as if like the war is normal to go on with. So yeah, in our church, as or in our congregations, as I said, I mean, we've had a lot, like, we have a great women program, and like we have a gender justice office that works very closely with a lot of our churches, and mostly they're meeting up online now, so it's not that much to see each other, because most of the people that are working there are like in Jerusalem, so it's difficult to reach or difficult to gather people right now. Anyway, so should I talk more now about the gender justice? Kind of like sound.
Sure, yeah, it would be great to know, Palestinian women are not only victims, they also are agents, and they also they're agents of change. So what what are different projects and initiatives happening that are dealing with gender justice, which tie into the overall reality in Palestine, Israel?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of women have, like, I know it's difficult. It's not as easy as people think, even when, I mean, there's a lot that I would say are very, yeah, there's a lot of women doing a lot of initiatives, even peace initiatives here in Jerusalem and in the West Bank and so on. And it's sad that the whole things are being stopped in that sense, like the whole initiatives that are going like as if it's like, okay, no more, as if like, no more, we're not working anymore with Palestinian women in that sense. So I know a lot of women who are coordinators or heads of projects that are saying like, okay, it's not moving forward anymore, which is sad to hear. And it's just very I mean, we're like, it's difficult to explain, but let's say like having, like, it's not easy as a woman to reach a certain place in life, and that is still a struggle, I would say. Even if you do get it, you're still being discriminated, you're still being looked at in a different way just because you're a woman, and that's still there even in many work fields, especially talking to a lot of women who have like for the many women lawyers, a lot of heads of schools or like and so on. So there's still this part of the society that is still there with discrimination against women, even though they're quite in the lead, because it's still not there. And I mean, people sometimes don't even notice what they're doing and do not notice that this is being discriminating against women. Yeah, but let's, like, as Sam said, like, we have a lot, like, we have great women who are working in the gender justice ministry that we have in the ELCJHL, and our head director for that is Rana Isa. She's been working very intensely with a lot of our pastors, a lot of our churches, not only churches, but a lot of also Muslims, and a lot of like a lot of churches and a lot of religious communities, because our church law that has the gender justice law is has been spread around. So a lot of people are like, okay, we have a gender equality, we want that too. And it's been great that the church has been an agent for that change, an agent to show people that this is actually getting there, like it was the agent, like that there is a change going towards the society in order to change how people think in terms of gender, which is yeah. So let me tell you a bit about that. So by the Gender Justice Ministry is dedicated to promoting gender justice and equality in all our ministry in the church and the wider community. So the mission is to empower women and girls and advocate for their rights and equality, and challenge patriarchal structures and systems that contribute to gender-based violence and oppression, and create a community of empowered women and men who can effect change in their communities. The Gender Justice Ministry was established as the Women's Desk in 2008, and the Women's Desk was created to address significant cultural changes and gender gap faced by women in Palestine, particularly those living under occupation. The desk served as a listening ear to women in the church and community, providing solutions to address issues related to traditional gender role ideology. Then over time, the Women's Desk expanded its scope and programs to address broader issues related to gender inequality and discrimination within the church and society at large. As a result, the ministry was renamed the Gender Justice Ministry to reflect the broader focus. So today, the Gender Justice Ministry of the ELCJHL remains committed to promoting gender justice and equality in all of its ministries and programs, empowering a lot of the women and girls advocating for their rights and equality, challenging patriarchal structures and contributing that, or challenging these structures that contribute to gender-based violence and oppression. And we have a great women committee in the church that is working very intensely together, and that talk about that talk about a lot of different issues. But and lately, like our last youth camp that we had the empowering masculinity, or masculinity, like just addressing the issue, the whole issue of masculinity, like talking to a lot of men, to like, or the young boys that are in order to like positive masculinity. That was it. So it's just changing this like how the way that we think, because it is also needed. But a lot of men and a lot of young men did not really show up to these to the positive masculinity. It was mostly the girls that were there, so it was also a bit of a challenge. Like you're talking about empowering or positive masculinity, and it's with women, and so that's why we're hoping that we get to the chance that actually it's not always the issue of the women knowing their rights and their equalities, but it's also the way men and young men treat them as well. So there's a lot that we do, and like a lot that the gender justice program supports, and it's mainly also in the church court. So if some of you are familiar how it is in the Middle East, or how it is under the church law, like there is no equality in many aspects. Like there is no equality when we talk about family law, like when we talk about inheritance for the children, it doesn't go equally to all the children, but it usually goes to the oldest sons, and usually is discrimination against the gender. So it's like it's more so we changed that so that all the kids kind of have the same inheritance, in that sense, that there is no gender that is higher than the other, or that's like that sense as well with the kids. Like when there is if there is a case of divorce, that the kids do not go automatically to the father, but there's a whole process of that being handled so that it's actually a healthy kind of healthy atmosphere for the kids in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's very important and relevant, because whenever we see times of immense violence, or times where, for example, in COVID, you see how domestic violence goes up, you see how there's a lot of attacks on women, and I'm sure there will be a spike in that in the next few days, if not already. Before I open up for questions from the attendees of this meeting, which I recommend, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I'll ask maybe one last final question. Is we're all focused on the situation, the violent situation that is going on. We are all trying to advocate for a ceasefire, for justice, for international law to be implemented. How important is it to include within our advocacy the dimension of gender violence, the dimension of what women are going through in the West Bank and in Jerusalem and in Gaza, the particular effects of what Israel's actions are doing? How important is that in our advocacy and struggle for justice?
I think it is only, it is very, of course, it's very important. I mean, that's, there is no discussion. I think it's just like, it's any human being seeing what injustices is happening there, and like we should all be advocating for each other. It's like we should all be, we should share more the stories. I think it is very much like if we're not the ones sharing their stories when they are not able to, then we are their voice. And if we're like, that's why if we need to do as much as we can. Sometimes we think, okay, what will this one small thing do? I think this one small thing can do a lot, because if we all do small things like talking to our congressmen, talking to a lot of people in order to push for the ceasefire, in order to push for having a just place, for having humanitarian aid reach the women and reach the people in Gaza. I think it's a lot that we can do. I think sometimes we think less of ourselves, of what the actions we're doing can affect, but and on the long term, it does have a big effect, and it is being supportive and helpful for that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We have a question here saying, is there any gender equality part of school programs, at least in church-related schools? Do you know something about that, Reverend Fally?
And courses, like in one of the courses that they teach about gender equality in that sense, but and more in high school.
So I think
Yes, to be honest, like I'm not
yeah, sorry, the Wi-Fi got cut off there. Could you maybe repeat what you said?
time. Right now, working with interrelated.
Sally, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're okay. I think she's logged off. Hopefully she'll log in back again. Okay, maybe as we wait for Sally to log in back again, I think it would be good to talk about the Kumi discussion points, talking points of this week, and which will lead to what our advocacy and actions can be as a collective here today. So the main talking point is to highlight the dire situation in Gaza and how we can best support the advocacy through the horrific situation that the medical teams have to go through, which is against international law. I believe Sally is back with us. I'll give her a minute until her Wi-Fi connects. So just before you continue answering the questions, so yeah, the medical facilities and the medical staff and patients are under protection of international and humanitarian law, and that is not being implemented. So we want to try and advocate for that. Israel is having a clear restriction of essential medical supplies for entering Gaza. Operations are being made through flashlights and torches on the phones. And there's already, by the British Medical Association, has condemned the bombing already for exactly those humanitarian reasons that are happening. So those are kind of the talking points of today. I guess I'll let Reverend Sally continue answering the questions, and then we can start thinking about how we can act upon that. So Reverend Sally, we didn't hear your last response. Could you maybe repeat the answer and the question, perhaps, if that's okay?
Sure. Sorry. Yeah. Is the connection fine, by the way? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, it's clear now. And if maybe it lags, maybe turn off the camera, and then it might help.
So, how is the gender equity goal of the UN Social Development Goals help or enable gender equity in Palestine? That was the question that I received, and I think, yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question, and I think it's not. I don't have a perfect answer for it, but I'm just hoping that through the work of a lot of the Palestinian women and like here and like that their work that they're doing is actually lightning more than that, because they're connected with a lot of people all around the world. And I think once we reach, like, of course, I think it's a long road in Palestine to reach a social or gender equity. I think this is just like, I don't know how many years away, because it's just like, even in the churches, okay, we're there. Like, I wouldn't even say that we're completely there as Lutheran churches, but in general, as churches, we're not there yet. And in the society, there are so many things that are being criticized in that sense. So, and I mean, here and there, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to reach or enable this equity. And I think there's also the will, like the people, some people don't want it as well, like also a lot of women, I must say, because I don't know, like I would like to know the answer to that as well, why a lot of women are not advocating for themselves and fighting for their rights as well. But not, I don't know why, but there are many reasons.
Yeah, there's a few questions about yourself. You know, what you're the first female ordained pastor in Palestine. So could you maybe answer, you know, what made you decide to go into ministry? What made you want to pastor your flock in Bet Sahur in Jerusalem? Who made you conscious of gender justice, those issues? When did that come about? And how did you pursue your involvement in the church?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a pastor's family, so I was always very much involved in church, and I was very, yeah, I mean, I was very interested in theology, and I thought there are so many things in church that I would like to change. Yeah, so a lot of things that I would like to change, and then like I'd never thought of gender as an issue, but I've always saw that there's a lot of that present in the church. I mean, I was like, why not women be there? Because our Lutheran church is quite with the outside world. We have pastors, like women pastors, come to the church, and I've seen that. I was like, we have that, and it wasn't like from the beginning the thought of, okay, I'm going to study theology and I'll come back and be a pastor. That wasn't like, I didn't think of that. I just wanted to go into ministry, like into theology. And throughout my studies, I felt like I have seen that how much connected, or how much the theology is related, or how much I want to do in my community, in my church. And that's where my call started. So I wanted to give that back to my community. And so that's how it all went, like throughout my studies. And then coming back here, it wasn't an easy road. And it wasn't like, it wouldn't have been possible before if the church didn't kind of also pave. Started studying theology before, but were not able to be ordained, or their congregations were not accepting of that. So I was like, and that all changed throughout the last years with a lot of work in the congregations and so on. And so our Lutheran congregations have been very accepting of, or seeing more women pastors and knowing what it means to have women pastors and having even gender equality in the church. So that very much we got there, like we reached to that. I mean, till the ordination happened, and I mean, it was just one step. I wouldn't say that we reached the perfect, of how having women pastors. Okay, now we have a woman pastor, but there's still a lot of work in the churches where they were working with also 8 other men pastors is also a challenge. And it's also not as easy as, I mean, it's not as easy, even though we're all in the Lutheran Church, we understand having, we support women ordination, but I think a lot of people don't know what comes to it. Like, why not also treat pastors the same way? Because they still would look at me differently than my male colleague just because of gender. And so there's a long road to change that as well. And I can say from experience, like I know that a lot of women, a lot of like other confessional churches have problems with having a woman pastor, but I would always say that respect is the most important thing. So if you don't go respectful, if you're not respectful towards the other person, then how do we reach that? How do we reach even communication in order to understand? Because we don't need to, it's not about like, if you're greeting me, that doesn't mean, okay, I accept women ordinations in the church. But it would be something that, like, if someone in the street, like everyone was like hesitant, everyone doesn't know how to behave with women pastors in town, even in Jerusalem. I mean, it's like a lot of people come up to me and say, Father. I'm like, okay, it's nice. I mean, it's interesting to see what comes up. And some ask, shall we call you Mother? And I'm like, please don't. And like, it's really interesting, I would say, being a woman pastor in here. And I would like, yeah, I should share more often these funny stories that happen from time to time.
Thank you, Reverend Azar. Yeah, we deeply appreciate you coming on such late notice, and the subject, even though our eyes are in Gaza and we're going to address it right now and be active in it, it's an important issue, very relevant. So thank you for all that you're doing with promoting gender justice and also pastoring the flock, your flock in these horrific times. So thank you very much, Reverend Azar. Don't know if...
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Now we will be moving more into our Kumi Action. As people have mentioned in the chat, I don't know how to express what's going on in Gaza. I mean, even after the hospital and church bombing, the bombs are just continuing. The death toll is rising. The videos are horrific. Mostly children and women are dying, and we need to do something about that. So as I mentioned, and I'll go about it again, the talking point is focusing on the humanitarian crisis within the medical aspect of what's going on in Gaza. As I mentioned, under international and humanitarian law, medical facilities such as hospitals, clinics, and medical staff and patients are supposed to be protected. It's a crime to assault them. All of the hospitals nearly in Gaza have been issued warnings that they will be bombed. We've witnessed a few hospitals getting missiles hit. The closure on Gaza, the siege, the restriction of any medical aid, food, water, electricity, and fuel, that is a crime that is not lawful under international law. The medical teams and staff are doing acts of heroism, performing surgeries without anesthesia, working more than 48 hours without sleep, having to work whilst your families are dead, families are missing, whilst you're also under severe adverse circumstances. So we need a resounding call for a de-escalation to avoid further Israeli airstrikes. highlight the threats that have been made against hospitals all over Gaza. I know Quds Hospital has been recently on the news, and we need to support the efforts already being made that are condemning the violations of international law against medical teams and patients and staff and facilities, and we also need to call for it. So I am going to share again the link on the chat, and also Ryan, I'm sure you have as well, but just everybody could click on it. And then once you click on it, you will see that there are a few contact informations of different people. We have the British Medical Association, in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, and Irish medical organization, as well as US and Canada. So we have phone numbers as well as emails, and yeah, that's actually a good question. I'm not sure. If anybody knows if Physicians for Human Rights have made an expression or concern within Israel, that would be great. Thank you for the question, Jan. Yes, and there's another comment saying, not de-escalation, but ceasefire, and I absolutely agree with that, especially after there was a supposed UN resolution trying to be passed, and it got vetoed by the states. Just for a momentary ceasefire to supply life-saving aid. So perhaps with the time that we have now, which is around 13 to 12 minutes, have a look again at the different contact informations on the Kumi Now newsletter and write to them maybe an email, which basically is saying that we need to call for a ceasefire, we need to uphold and implement international law regarding the medical statuses of different international law, that they shouldn't be targeted, they shouldn't be bombed, to condemn it as well, and to call for an immediate ceasefire. So perhaps in the 12 minutes that we have, let's all write an email. Yes, and if you have any relevant information regarding that, please do post on the chat. Okay, I think that's the end of today's session, but if you haven't finished your email, please continue doing so. It's all on the newsletter, on the Kumi newsletter, the talking points and contact information. Thank you very much for your attendance and your work. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next week. We'll be having Professor Santiago Slabotsky, who will be addressing the issue of Gaza and in the situation, but also the subject of anti-Semitism and how we can navigate the difficult, sensitive, and important conversation of anti-Semitism and the subject. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day, morning, evening, or afternoon. Bye-bye.